Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be a comparison between these two knives with a focus on this knife. And these are a small Sebenza 21 and a large Sebenza 31. And so before I get into the video here, I want to first of all say a huge thank you to Keith, who sent this small Sebenza for me to check out. I really appreciate it because I have only ever seen a small Sebenza once in person and wasn't able to really get a good look at it. Just kind of checked it out in passing at this year's Rendezvous at GEC. And it's something that I have been interested in because this year I have really turned to carrying a Sebenza most days. So I've carried a Sebenza, whether it was this one or the previous one that I had, the drop point, more than any other modern knife so far this year. I believe about 3 months worth. And then, I've peppered in other things that I've been reviewing and such, but I've been carrying a large Sebenza most days this year. And when I've seen pictures of the small Sebenza online, I've always thought that it looked really small. So just seeing it in people's hands or in comparison to other knives that I'm more familiar with, I've always thought it looked almost minuscule, too small for me. I have kind of short fingers, but wide, thick, you could say fat hands. And so I never really thought that it would work well for me. And I like knives in the size of the large Sebenza. But when I got to check out a small Sebenza at the Rendezvous, for the little amount of time that I saw it, I was really impressed. I was surprised to think that it actually might be ergonomic for me. So I was definitely interested and appreciate Keith being willing to send this knife for me to get to check out a little bit more. Now, as you can see, this is a little different from my large Sebenza in a couple ways. First of all, it's a 21. So, this isn't really a comparison video between the 21 and the 31, but the 21 has this hole, which my understanding is it's part of the machining process, and then it doesn't have, I should say, the ceramic ball bearing lock interface. So just the titanium lock interface. I do like the feel and sound of the ceramic ball. A lot of people don't. A lot of people prefer 21s. I think that I prefer the look of inlays on the 21s over the 31s, but that's kind of neither here nor there for this video. But another difference is that this is a left-handed knife. So you can see here they're opposite sides. Keith said all of his Chris Reeve knives are left-handed. And then also it's the drop point. But otherwise, I think it's a fair comparison between them two, and for me to check it out to see if the small works for me. I've also, considering it's a left-handed knife, found that it's really easy to open. I think that they just have obviously a great design in the Sebenza, in that I really have no trouble opening it with my left hand, and I'm not ultra ambidextrous, so that's a nice thing about this. I did notice also, again, kind of not the main focus, but the lockup is a good bit later than on my 31. So you can see that, but it's also an older knife, so that might be part of the reasoning for that. Another difference is the clip is canted on the 31 versus straight on the 21. But anyway, I really have been surprised by how ergonomic it feels. I can get a almost full 4-finger grip on this knife. You can see that my pinky finger is mostly in the main handle. It does hang over, but I just don't think that this little point here at the butt would really be an issue, especially in using a knife this size. It feels like it's just gonna kind of sit in my hand, and especially being that really more often you're gonna use the knife like this. So the ergonomics do feel really good for me. And it's interesting because I recall the first time I got a Chris Reeve knife was a long time ago. I was in college, and it was a 21, and I didn't think that it was very ergonomic. It was a large, but I recall not really finding it to be that ergonomic. I think at the time it was probably more that I realized that it was not a good financial decision and that I should sell it. It's interesting to see how tastes change and things like that. But it does feel good here in my hand, and I can get a nice solid grip on it, and whether it is in the pinch grip or in the kind of hammer grip here. So I've been really pleasantly surprised by that. The other thing is that it does feel like a pretty usable size to me. So if you compare it to some other kind of EDC type knives, like the Civivi Elementum, obviously a different price range, but very similar amount of blade, even a little bit more edge on the small Sebenza. The handles are about the same size. You know, compare it to a Spyderco Native 5. You get more edge, a good bit more edge on the Sebenza, and I, have carried the Native 5 a lot, and the handle is about the same size. So, while it always looked tiny in pictures to me, it really ends up being, I think, a good EDC size and probably a better size knife, a more comfortable size knife for most people than the large. I know some people online often do talk about the large as if it's massive. It doesn't feel massive to me. I mean, other than the Sebenzas, the knife that I've carried most this year is the Spyderco Military 2, so it's obviously a much larger knife. And I, carry other big knives sometimes too. I like this size of knife, this size of blade, and a lot of that is because I also often am carrying a, kind of move these so you can see them both. I am often also carrying a traditional knife, so something like this. And so, if you have a small traditional knife like this, the small Sebenza, it's not a whole lot bigger. But if you have the large Sebenza, it is, a different type kind of use case maybe for that. So if you were only carrying one knife, I think it does make sense. You can just kind of be right in the middle ground with a small Sebenza. But if you're carrying two, or if you just need a bigger knife or like a bigger knife, the larger Sebenza is a great option. But then on the other hand, if you are someone that either for legality reasons or just, your job or just the people you're around, you need to have a smaller, less kind of scary knife. I think that this size difference really makes a big difference in the, how this knife looks. Like the large is a big looking knife and the small is not a big looking knife. It's a small looking knife. And I know that sounds, obvious, but it really does look different. They feel different to me, like a different kind of a vibe, to use a term. So I think that it is something that honestly, I can't believe it, but it has made me want to get a small Sebenza. Now, I actually have that drop point that I mentioned at Chris Reeve right now to get kind of the spa treatment, and then my plan was to sell it. I also have considered trying to trade it for an Inkosi. I know the small Inkosi is actually even smaller than the small Sebenza. So I'd like to try an Inkosi, but also this has really impressed me. I really wouldn't mind having a small Sebenza also. So like I say, I have really enjoyed getting to check this out. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, this edge is from Rob Bixby, Apostle P. I know Rob from the Great Eastern Cutlery Rendezvous, but I don't think I've ever seen one of his edges. And that was actually the first thing I noticed about this knife is, man, what an edge. This is a nice edge. Very, very sharp, mirror, just a beautiful edge. So I did want to mention that real quick. And so one more time, I really appreciate Keith sending this knife as well as several other knives, some traditional knives along for me to check out. It really means a lot when people trust me with their beautiful, great knives like this. So I really want to again thank Keith for that, and just show my appreciation. It means a lot for me to get to check out a knife like this that otherwise would be, an expensive thing to try, So thanks again to Keith. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. Also, check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And make sure you subscribe there via email for the newsletter. That's the best way to get all the latest knife thoughts, and I've been trying to send out some more, articles and things like that. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.